What's up, outdoor adventurers? Today we're here at Cape Fear Customs, who has graciously opened up their shop, and our plan is to go ahead and do our first 7,500 mile service on Noah, our Dodge Ram 2500 diesel pickup truck. Now, we want to stay up to date with our service and make sure everything's done correctly, because not only is this our tow rig that tows our home all across the country, but it's also our backcountry adventure rig. So we want to make sure we hit those service intervals exactly when they're meant to be done. So, checked out the manual, right? For the first round of service at 7,500 miles, it recommends that we rotate our tires. We also go ahead and grease the front drive shaft, check all the front end components, and grease anything that's serviceable in the front end. Surprisingly enough, no oil change until 15,000 miles. So, pretty easy, first simple round of service, but we're going to talk about what you need to be looking for when you get to your different service intervals. We're going to talk about rotating tires, why it's so important. Also, if you rotate 4 tires like we're going to do, or if you're doing a 5-tire rotation because you have a full-size spare and you want to work that spare into the roundup. And then we're going to go underneath and we're going to look at some of the serviceable components under there and some of the different things we need to be checking out on our 4-wheel drives to make sure that they're ready for our next adventure. So stay tuned. Let's see what we can do. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to talk about is tire rotation. So why is this so important to rotate our tires? Well, when we have the 4 tires on our vehicle and we're driving down the road, they experience different types of wear. Our front ends of our vehicles, first off, especially if it's a pickup truck, is going to be our heaviest portion of the vehicle. Especially after you modify it with a front bumper, winch, and things like that. Especially for us with a diesel front end. Also with the front, tires turn, right? Not like the rear where they're just set straight. So what we notice here is that we start to get some wear on the edges of the tires. You can see where it starts to round off here at the edges. And because of the turning, when you run your fingers forward, it feels fairly smooth, but when you start to run your fingers backwards on the tire, you start to feel some irregularities in the tread, some cupping as we call it. So this is where we start to notice the excessive tire wear on the front on this outer edge if you don't rotate your tires in time. And once you've worn through that, they really start to go quickly after that. Sometimes you get a little extra wear on the inside, but most of the time it's on the outside, because as you turn, that tire on the outer edge of your turn, you're really putting pressure against it while you're turning. So the front wears completely different from the back. Let's go to the back and we can take a look at the rear tires, and you'll notice that they don't have this outer edge rubbed anywhere near like this on the rear. So let's go take a look. Alright guys, so back here at the rear of the vehicle, we can see here that first off, when we run our fingers forward and backwards, we don't get that irregular wear, right? It's very much even. Also right here on the edge, because these tires aren't turning, we don't get that wear down on this outer edge here. So what we do get is a good, if everything's aligned correctly, nice, consistent, even wear across the tire if we've had good air pressure. But because these are the tires that are getting most of the torque, especially when we're towing, they are going to wear quicker a lot of times if we're applying a lot of throttle or accelerating, then decelerating, then accelerating again. More aggressive style driving. So these tires can tend to wear faster in those types of applications. But because we want the front to match this type of wear pattern, that's where we're going to rotate it into place. So then these will go to the front, they'll get worn down on the edge a little bit, the rear will get flattened back across again, and then we'll swap them out. If we don't do that, a lot of times what will happen is we'll just end up replacing 2 tires a lot faster than we normally would. So that's why we want to rotate all 4 of our tires. Now, if you've got a matching spare, it is a good idea. Remember when we talked about tires and date codes in one of our earlier videos? It is a good idea to rotate that 5th spare in, because we don't want it just to sit, right? We want to use it. Then when the time comes, we can buy all 5 tires, and then our date codes match, we know that spare is in good shape. But for us, because we don't, ours is just a spare tire, right? Not a matching wheel and everything. we are just going to rotate all 4 tires. So all we're doing in this rotation is taking the back tires to the front and the front tires to the back and keeping the sides the same. We're not going to do any fancy X pattern. It's just a back to front, front to back. If you've got that 5th spare, there is, and I'll see if I can find a link and post it down in the descriptions, there is a recommended way to rotate that tire. So let's talk about tire rotation. Let's go back to the front and see what we can do. Alright, so with these tires side by side right here, we can really start to see the difference in the wear. This is the front tire, this is the outer edge, this is the rear tire outer edge, right? We see how crisp these sipes still are, how they still look very, very uniform all the way across. Whereas this one, you can see the sipes have really started to open up. There is a definite slant outwards and a little bit of slight cupping on it, and we can definitely see this rounded edge versus a little bit more square shoulder right here. So definitely a big difference, right? Just in about 7,500 miles, which is a recommended tire rotation for this truck. Probably next time I'll stick to 5,000 miles for the tire rotation, just to make sure that I keep nice even wear. I like to make sure my tires last a while. But you can definitely see it on the front versus the rear. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this tire rotation. Alright, so before I put the front tire back on, it's a great opportunity just to do a visual inspection. You know, regardless of the mileage on your vehicle, just looking at your brake rotors for any irregular wear, checking your brake pads to see how much life's left in them. Obviously, I got a heavy truck, tow a lot. I'm going to be going through brake pads pretty quickly. Maybe we'll look at upgrading that at a later date. Some of the other things that I can check out while I'm here, my drag link and tie rod ends on this particular vehicle. Unfortunately, these aren't serviceable, so I don't have any grease points on them. So just a visual inspection, making sure that they are in good condition, right? Don't have any wear on them when I work the wheel back and forth. Wheel bearings right here, up and down movement. Normally I'll let you know that maybe a wheel bearing's going bad. But again, we're at a 7,500 mile service here. Hopefully we don't have any problems. I doubt it. Ram's a pretty tough truck, right? But it's always a good idea to go ahead and do that visual inspection. Then I can go ahead and put that tire on and get to work. All right, so notice as I work my way around, I'm going in an X fashion. I'm not circular around hitting the very next bolt each time. I'm also not romping down with the impact gun. We'll talk about torque settings here in just a minute. Alright, so talking about torque specs, your lug nuts on your vehicles have specific torque specs that they need to be set to. Too high, for instance, if we just hammer it down with an impact wrench, we actually stretch the threads on the stud so that eventually we're going to stretch them out and these lug nuts will start to back off on their own, right, and could possibly fall off. If we don't torque them down enough, then they can vibrate off while we're going down the road. Both ways, eventually once we start losing a couple of lug nuts, the rest come off and the tire falls off while we're going down the road. So that's why we want to go ahead and set it to the correct torque specs. You notice when I was running the impact in, I didn't just hammer it down in there. I just got it tight, right? So now that I've got them just close, I'll take my torque wrench, and for this truck it's 130 foot-pounds of torque. I'll go ahead and go through, same thing, doing my X pattern around and set them into torque specs. Then I'm going to let the truck back down onto the ground and I'm going to go around 130 foot-pound of torque in a circular pattern just to make sure that I got them all right again. And using a torque wrench, when it hits that 130 foot-pounds of torque, it's going to give me a click to know that I don't need to tighten it down anymore. So that's why it's so important checking torque settings or torque specs and making sure you have the correct. Not too many ugga-duggas on there tightening it down, because eventually you'll start to stretch out that stud in there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up, then we'll go underneath and I'll show you what we got under there. Alright, so it says to inspect the front drive shaft, lubricate if necessary. So check in our universal joints here, slip joint here for any breaks. We can see some of the covering on it's flaking off some of the paint, but there's no tears in it, so it's still protected. It does say to lubricate it, but again, we've got a non-serviceable U-joint there. Same thing in the back, it's got a CV joint there that's non-serviceable. So not a lot that we can do there, but I can give it a quick visual inspection underneath here and make sure I don't see any fluids coming down while I've got it up on a lift, nice and easy to take care of. So that's the end of our service on our Ram. We've kind of gone through everything here. I'm going to tidy up and we will catch you guys next time.